the H.A.T.A.E podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the H.A.T.A.E podcast with me, Benjamin Madel. Today we've got my guest here, James Atkinson, from the Life of Hair YouTube channel. How are you, James?
I'm very good, Ben. Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate it immensely. Love the fact you've gone down the podcast route.
Yeah, absolutely. It was time to do something different with the group, James. We need to explain what we're doing. You know, it's got to continually evolve or you become irrelevant.
Yes.
So what we do on here, we don't like mucking around too much. We just go straight into it. So how did you get involved with hairdressing?
Good question. So I was 15, 16, and I'd played golf very seriously. I thought I was going to be a professional golfer. I played for England, and I was one of the top juniors in the country. I was one of the top juniors in the world at one point. I was playing golf with a guy one day. He was a hairdresser, and I was having a bad season, you know, at a point in my career of golf where bad seasons meant people started to doubt your credibility or ability to become a professional. And he said, you know, James, if you're not a professional golfer, what will you do? And I said, well, I don't really know. I said, I probably work for my dad. My dad had some business. And so I'd gone to my dad and said, you know, if I'm not a golfer, can I work for you? And he said, in the nicest possible way, no effing way. And I didn't really understand what he meant at the time. I was a bit shocked. But, you know, many years later, he clarified what he meant. And, you know, he meant it in the best possible way, because he wanted me to find, he hated his job, effectively. He hated what he did. And he wanted me to find my own journey. And so, yeah, this guy who had asked me what I was going to do, then I bumped into him again. He said, did you ask your dad if he could work for me? I said, yeah, I did ask him. He said, what did he say? He said, no effing way. He said, I thought he might say that. So that was, you know, and that was it. And I was playing golf with this guy one day. His name was Keith Reeves. He owned a few salons in the Midlands called Talking Heads.
Okay.
And he was the president of Hairdressers Guild. And, you know, he was a gentle, all-round nice guy. Gianni Scamacci was trained by him. And, you know, he'd done a bit in the industry. And so he said, look, if you want to come and try out, you know, hairdressing, then you're always welcome. Anyway, I poo-pooed the idea, you know, initially. But I went to one day, convinced me to go and sweep some hair in a barber shop. And I just loved the environment. And he then turned around to me and said, well, you know, maybe you should get a qualification in it, you know, continue with your golfing, but can get a qualification to you know, cement yourself with a trade. And then if it all goes wrong, you've got a backup plan. And so I thought to myself, well, you know, this sounds good. I was a little bit hesitant because what I wanted to do was barber, but he wanted me to be a hairdresser. Anyway, and this kind of rest was history. I did my MVQ level 2 in 11 months. And then I toyed with the idea of moving to Liverpool to work with Andrew Collins, who was a kind of an acquaintance of a friend of my dad's friend. And that didn't float my boat. So then I went to London.
Okay.
And, you know, I was kind of really wanting to, you know, kind of find a place to work that really grew my skill set. So I spent some time at Sassoon. You know, then I left those guys and I went to Rush for a bit, which was basically Sassoon at the time. They'd headhunted a lot of the Sassoon staff. You know, and that was kind of the beginning of my career. And that's probably the first 5 years in a nutshell. And in that time, you know, I think I did myself the biggest favor I could have possibly have done myself. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I became obsessed with the basics.
Yeah.
Completely obsessed with the basics, understanding the fundamental aspect of hairdressing, you know, from the ground up. And, you know, it was a great place. Then I didn't color hair at this point. I just cut hair. Didn't start coloring hair till my last year at Rush. And and it was just getting that fundamental understanding. Because bearing in mind, I don't know about you, Ben, I hadn't even picked a comb up before I started hairdressing.
No, pretty much the same as you did. I mean, I had a slightly different things. My parents are both hairdressers.
Yeah.
There was certainly never the push either to go into hairdressing. You know, they always it's too much hard work. Find something else to do.
Yes.
I got to the point I didn't have anything else to do, so it was sort of well, we come in the shop then. But yeah, so whereabouts were? How old were you then when you started to get sort of when you were sort of what should we say? Had the idea of hairdressing sort of put into your mind?
I was 16.
Oh, okay. So you were school leaving age in the
I was
UK
school
then.
leaving
Yeah.
age. Yeah, I was school leaving age. I was actually I didn't go through the traditional schooling route. I was privately educated
Yeah.
through a home tutor.
Okay.
Um, so I always had a bit of a different path. But Keith was really good to me, and I worked with a guy called Peter Horn, was one of the original Tony and Guy crew from kind of when Tony and Guy were just had one salon. He worked in the original salon.
Yeah. In Clapham, wasn't it? Yeah.
Sorry?
In Clapham, wasn't it? Yeah.
Clapham, yeah, that's it.
Southwest
Yeah.
London. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I worked with another guy called Luke, who was worked at Sassoon all through this kind of 70s. And, I had really good people around me who were associated with Keith, and they all taught me bits and pieces before I even got to London. But I mean, I think that initial kind of getting into hairdressing, etc. I didn't take it very seriously for a minute, and then I took it really seriously,
Yeah.
and that's how I got the MVQ done so fast, because I was there day and night. I asked the college if I could come to all the night classes, as well as attend my day at college that I was doing. And I was just, I didn't live far from the college, and I was just, well, I mean, I say not far. It was about a 20-minute drive.
Yeah.
And I was all over it as much as possible, and I think that came from the fact that I'd been so dedicated to golf. I was so dedicated to practicing. I would practice till my hands bled.
Yeah.
Playing golf, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do this and give up on golf, which was a hard decision to make, I need to be fully committed to it. So I pretty much dropped golf off within the sort of space of a year, and I did play a bit, but it was a sinking ship, because I was fully immersed in this hairdressing idea. And then I moved to London, as I say, and I became kind of fully immersed in that. And I was nearly 19. I was like 18, nearly 19, when I was fully immersed in that kind of, going to the next level, and making myself, I didn't want to be anything other than proficient at being a salon hairdresser. Anyway, many years went by. I left Rush. I went to work in Soho, and actually, it was at that point I thought I wanted to get into session styling. I thought I wanted to go down that route of sort of avant-garde and session and all that business. And actually, I went to a salon that was all freelancers. It was kind of one of the very first kind of all freelancer hair salons of the time. And there was lots of people who worked for big, like Guido and all that lot, Malcolm Edwards, and lots of big session stylists. And I thought, well, I'll get in with these guys, and then I'll go and shadow them, which I did. And there was a guy there, Jimo Salaka was there. Jimo was like Bjorg's hairdresser in the 90s and did all the Bjorg styles, and him and I got on really well, and blah blah blah. But it was at that point I met this chap called Adam Brown, who was head of Redken Australia previously, and had moved to the UK to work for Redken America, but from the UK.
Okay.
And so, a couple of long stories short, it was at this point in my career, I was it's longer than that. I was probably 6 years into my career. I'd learned to colour at that point. A guy called Chris Williams, who's no longer with us, rest in peace, Chris, who was just the best teacher for colour ever. He was from Sassoon and he'd gone to Rush, and he was just within 6 months. I'd gone from no colour to fully getting it, and it was just the way he delivered it. I've got quite a linear brain. I see things in black and white, like a sort of like a technical drawing. I see everything like that. I don't want the grey areas. I want to know the maths.
Yeah.
And he could deliver it like that. And that for me was just the best way that anyone could have possibly delivered being a colorist. And so, overnight, or what felt like overnight now, I'd gone from having decent cutting skills and also having then good coloring skills, and also wanted to go down that session road. But when I met Adam Brown, he was an educator for Redkin, global educator, blah, blah, blah. And he was also very good friends with Lee Stafford. And so I'd kind of had this idea that, session styling was the way forward. But actually, I started to see this other side of the industry where education was a big kind of prominent part of our industry. But I was also lacking a few skills as a hairdresser, like finesse, personalizing, refining my work in a way that meant that it was suitable for different types of people. And that was one of the joys of being in this salon in Soho, was that we had this guy, Philippe, and he was French, and he cut hair by just picking it up, just cutting it off. And, I'd taken 1 centimeter sections, and, I was very rigid in my thinking. And to see him cut hair like that and it come out beautifully, he was Erin O'Connor's hairdresser. He was hairdresser to so many celebrities, cut, lots of major fashion celebrity in this really kind of, non-structured way. And I thought, wow, if he can manage that, then there's got to be something that I can add to my technique. And then I had, and I started to pick all that up, and it was great. And I added it into my my kit. And I became friends with Adam more through cycling than I did through hair, really, ultimately. But I had this epiphany with Adam. He came to the UK. He had no clients. He had to start from zero. And within 6 months, he was chock-a-block.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, how has he done that? I've come to this salon. I've got very few clients, and he's busier than me. And we started, and he'd only started the month before I did. And so I started to study him and his behaviors, because as a hairdresser, he was fundamentally pretty decent. But he was one of those people that could just win over the client in the first minute.
Yeah.
And I saw this, and I just thought to myself, this is not all about being technically brilliant. Technically brilliant is just a fraction, a percentage of what we need to do to be successful hairdressers. And so I started to really monitor how he engaged with his clients, how he talked about their hair, and how he made them feel. And I'd already got a mild interest in psychology, human nature, behavioral psychology at that point. I'd read a lot of books and listened to podcasts, but I became very, very interested with the psychology and the humanistic behavioral side of client hairdresser interaction. And it was so interesting. My clientele skyrocketed because I really focused on that humanistic interactive side.
Yeah. What points did you sort of what bits could you sort of give sort of a small sort of synopsis of what bits how you implemented that into your work with your clients?
Yeah, of course, because I still do it today. Yeah. Right. I still do clients, and I still do it today. It's that initial consultation, that initial meeting, whether it's be prior to the appointment or at the appointment, it's the enthusiasm you bring to that person. It's that engagement, that eye level, sat down, discussing their hair, and making sure that you talk to them in a way that it's not downplaying what you're about to do. I hear so many hairdressers do these two things. One's, oh, that's not a problem, or that's easy, right? And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think you're wrong. I think you're quite right in the way that we downplay things. We don't upsell our skills enough as a
No,
hairdresser. It's not even upselling. It's just actually explaining what we're doing.
yeah,
You know, it's
precisely.
yeah,
So you've hit the nail on the head. It's explaining what we're doing rather than just saying it's a piece of cake. And if they've got a band in the middle of their hair and you're going about to color through that band, just tell them that band's going to be a problem.
yeah.
And it might impact the result this time, but it won't impact the result if we build a consistent relationship. And I talk to my clients in a way that is about a prolonged relationship. What I can do to your hair today, the next time, the next time, the next time. So that's one of the big. That's what they're the two kind of things that I talk about is the present and not downplaying the present, and the future, what we can do together. And it's a reciprocal relationship. I am your hairdresser, but we are doing this together because it's all about taste. My taste, your tastes might clash. So, but I can deliver what you want, providing it's achievable and we communicate well. So, sitting down, being engaged, talking about their face shapes, their skin tones, their hair types, things that you can do to those hair types, and trying to fit that into that person's realistic expectations. And that's the other thing, is bringing the expectation down and then exceeding the expectation.
No, no,
We'll,
definitely.
we'll leave everybody thinking, wow, fantastic, love it.
Yeah.
You know,
It's about
winner.
making it seen as a professional skill and as a genuine thing of value and knowledge, isn't it? That's what we do struggle with a lot with hairdressing. And like you're saying,
Absolutely.
I like the way that you speak about taking a client. This is what we're going to do today, and then we're going to move it along. Because
Yeah.
more times than not, is when you're getting a new client or someone in your chair for the first time, is you are not actually doing that appointment. You're working towards the next one. You know, they want their hair longer, they want their hair lighter, they want their hair darker.
Yeah.
They're coming to you because they either need a change or want the change.
Yes.
Hairdressers moved away or hairdressers stopped working, they need the change. You
Yeah.
know, last hairdresser wasn't quite doing what they want the change. You know,
Mm,
so is that is the thing, and I think that, like I say repeatedly on here, we don't do that enough. We don't sell our professional skill enough.
no.
We need to get hairdressing seen as a professional skill, a professional
Correct.
service, rather
Yes.
than a service.
Absolutely. And I think I liken it to dentistry sometimes when I talk about these things. We don't go to the dentist thinking it's easy to do teeth, but it's very much a similar skill set. It's just on a different part of the body. Now, obviously, this is medical and, takes a 7-year degree to get to the point of being a good or a qualified, sorry, rephrase, dentist. It probably takes another 3 years in the field to become good,
Yeah.
and maybe another 5 years to become a specialist in something. I don't think hairdressing is very different to that.
No,
We get
not particularly.
qualification in no time, but it takes years to specialize in something.
Yeah. It takes you I always thought I didn't feel like I was that good sort of looking back now. You gotta be 8 years in is
Oh
when
yeah, I think
when
10. I think
yeah,
10. I was, I didn't have all the tools,
yeah. It
consultation
it
for the
takes
first
time.
10 years.
Why is it, would you think then, that I mean, I've got my own opinions on this, but why is it you think that we're perhaps not, as an industry, not seen in the same light as these sort of, what should we say, the professional services, professional jobs, for want of a better phrase?
Well, because of the attitude, unfortunately, of people downplaying their confidence,
Yeah,
um, and not believing in it in the way that we should.
yeah,
I think there's a lot of people out there who feel like they're winging it because the education's not comprehensive enough in the first place. They go into the field not feeling confident, And that ultimately means that they don't talk in a professional way because they don't feel like they know themselves that they can deliver, or they're going to consistently deliver what people are looking for. And so therefore, rather than saying to people, actually, that's quite difficult,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do my best to get you there, but it might not be today, it might be on session 3. They'll say, don't worry, that's easy, to try and instill some faith or some belief into that client that they're going to deliver.
Yeah. Or it's the cutting
Because
it short, isn't it? It's the yeah, we can do that.
yeah, we
You
can
know,
do that, no problem.
we can do that. You know, whereas like you say is, you know, we can do that, but it's going to take 3 sessions. You know, that
Yeah,
those extra couple of words on the end will make all the difference in how it looks. It's also a thing from a business point of view as well. Is, you
yeah,
know, if you've got someone who's coming in for and they expect to be there for 3 appointments. I mean, I'm sure you do the same as it certainly I did. Is every single client I would have for colour, if it was the first time I had seen them or they wanted to change, they had to come in for a consultation before the day of the appointment.
yeah,
You know, to
yeah,
come in to obviously to comply with allergy testing as well.
yeah,
But my main thing was to allow them and get them to sit down and say, this is how it's going to have to work.
yeah.
You know, and I think that's something we don't do enough of in the
I
industry.
would rather not do their hair based on the fact that they don't like the idea it's going to take 3 goes than do their hair and then be disappointed.
Yeah,
And that's the
try
managing
and
expectations part, you
that's
know.
quite right. You know, is it that's another thing I think, you know, it's people are scared to turn the business away. You
Yes.
know, and I can understand it's very difficult out there at the moment, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
But it's that whole thing. I'd rather have someone say, "Oh, that guy wouldn't do my hair." He said my hair was dry. You know, it's too far gone to do anything with. Than sort of say, "Yeah, I can do that," and then you get the guy, "Oh my lord, what happened to your hair? Oh, this guy done it, and it's all broken off." And he's
Yeah.
all of a sudden you become the bad guy for not doing it, which
Yeah.
I'd much prefer to be, because then people, you know, that goes away. Whereas
100%.
if you're the bad guy for doing it, you know, and making a complete hash of it, it's there, you know, you're then the bad guy who can't do hair.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's
100%. I would, and I think there's a lot of salon owners out there that might watch this and think, you know, yeah, yeah, yeah. But how many times have you told your stylist off for turning away work? You know,
yeah.
because,
Certainly.
you
You
know,
know, and I think that's a problem as well. I think certainly with color work and chemical work, you know, is there's no if the stylist says no,
yeah.
then that would be fine. Cutting, I can always,
Well,
you know,
cutting's different. Yeah.
cutting's different because you should always be able to get a tune out of something. You know, we can
Yeah.
work towards that for a couple of appointments time and whatnot. But certainly with
Yeah.
chemical services, you should, yeah, it should
Yeah.
be a non-negotiable. If the stylist doesn't feel comfortable doing it, then that's that. It may be something that you even look at as a perhaps more experienced or more confident hairdresser, and you can say, "Oh yeah, we could do. Yeah, it's no trouble. That's 2 appointments. Might even be one." You
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
it's you know, as salon owners, that's something you've got to, you know, respect. I think, you know,
I do, yeah, and I hear it all the time where people don't allow that breathing space, or that opportunity to say no. I mean, I get people message me, not really regularly, but regularly enough, saying, "Oh, you know, I've got this color scenario. I've told my boss I can't do it. She's saying I have to do it. Do you think it's a good idea to do it?"
yeah,
You know, and and you know, and I have to, you know, and I'll quite often side with the stylist, and they'll use me as evidence,
yeah,
you know, and that's tragic. I think that they've had to come to me in the
yeah,
first place, you know, and I'm
absolutely,
sure that there's other hairdressers out there that have put themselves out there who get those messages too. Um, but you know that it's that initial engagement, you know, where you are recognizing things about. I just, you know, I did a new client last week, right? Got naturally curly hair. You know, she told me all about her curly hair and how terrible it was, and stuck out like this, and did all that. You know, and that she'd got a round face. She had none of those things, but she believed it. But when I showed her the opposite, and that her hair could sit flatter, curled nicely, she didn't have a round face. You know, she could see immediately. You know, she was totally engaged in what I was telling her, and the likelihood of her not coming back is so slim.
Yeah.
You know, I've reduced the likelihood of her not coming back down to maybe 1 or 2%. And it's percentage game, right?
Yeah.
You've got to leave, you've got to get that client to leave more than likely thinking to themselves, I want to come back to that person because they told me something that I'd never heard before, or, you know, and that's another thing that I do when I'm doing the hair. I talk about hair and facts about hair and hair structure and just nuggets of information that mean that I don't have to justify how easy the job is. I can just explain to them what I know about hair, and that knowledge gives them confidence. I don't have to go, yeah, don't worry, love, it's easy. I'll just go and mix up. I'll tell them how difficult it might be or might not be.
Yeah.
And I will then explain as I go along what I know about that particular situation and how it might play out and how I've done it before and what the outcomes have been look like, you know, and that will settle them right down anyway, you know, right in the appointment. And then of course, if you just exceed those expectations, you're winning chicken dinner.
Yeah.
You know, and that is what I think a lot of people miss in the consultation. I watch consultations when I teach in salons, or, you know, I've worked in plenty of salons to watch consultations. And the amount of times I've heard, don't worry, leave it with me. I've got the vision. That's easy. You know, all of those very throwaway comments, you know, within even if it's just a set of highlights, you know, that you're going to lift and tone, right? Now, that's easy to us. The amount of times I still meet clients that still don't understand the toning process.
Yeah.
We've been toning hair now for such a long time. How are we at the point where these people have been into salons, had bleach and highlight services, and don't understand what the toner is and does?
Yeah. I mean, I would say in defense of that, though, it's the whole highlights and toner thing, the lifting and tone thing, as a widespread. I mean, it's probably been the last decade, hasn't it? Is when
Yeah.
it's really pushed on, sort of where that sort of the ombre balayage, sort of the ombre, I think was where it started to come in
Yeah.
a little bit more.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Dip dive. Yeah.
that's right, yeah. Yeah, when it started, that was then when the toner came in. So, you know, in defense of clients, you know, perhaps if they've been going to the same place and whatnot, I can understand where they would be coming from.
Yeah.
But I entirely agree with you. It's that whole thing of where people are perhaps not quite aware of what the processes are now. And I think that's important to let clients know, because of how much you've got to have to charge. You know, it's because you've got another, you know, depending how you do it, you've got another half an hour, 45 minutes on the appointment
Yeah.
plus product. So it's all of a
Well,
sudden, well, I was only paying this before. How come it's, well, because you've got another hour plus product, you know? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And of course, I think that's what, back to your question about comparisons to professional industries.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to your dentist, he'll say, right, your root canal's £300,
Yeah.
the injections are this much, the X-rays are this much, and he'll talk you through the process.
Yeah.
You know, and you know what's going to happen. It's been broken down to you. Now you're usually in a position where you've kind of got to go with it. But, you know, when someone comes in for their color service, you know, we'll say, okay, what we'll do is, you know, when I say to some people like, all right, I'm going to put a root shadow on, I'll say what we'll do is we're going to lift that hair and then we'll just put color back in to then change the way that you perceive it. Because when we lift the hair, it's going to look maybe like a color that you're not necessarily going to want. Because I'll take my clients back to the base, from the base and back to the section with bleached hair quite often. And if they see that, they can be a bit shocked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's when the panic starts setting in, isn't it? You know, they might not even say anything, you know, but they'll sit there and they'll say, roots are a little bit warm. Or,
yeah.
Does he know what he's doing? Oh no,
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
wrong. It's all gone wrong. You could
It's
even
all
get it
gone
out perfect, but some people have decided it's all wrong already. You
Yes.
know, you could get it
Yes.
identical to the picture that they've bought in. This is brilliant,
Yeah.
perfect, and it's no, warm.
No.
Yeah, roots are warm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly that. It's very, it's very challenging, isn't it, to once you've got them on the back foot, once you're on the back foot, and they don't believe in you, it's very challenging to push it back up the hill.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I've saying before, is that once we set the tone, it's that initial consultation, that initial engagement, not just the first visit, but subsequent visits. I mean, I saw L'Oreal did some, went around asking, well, not L'Oreal themselves, but that they employed a company to go around asking people on the streets, when you went last had your hair done, did you feel like you had a consultation? And it was a shocking number of people said no.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you know, and that's not okay, right? You know, that's just us assuming, you know, as an industry, that everybody's okay with the price, everyone's okay with the length of time, everyone's okay with you know, the condition of their hair, no matter what we do to it. And so it's reducing the assumptions for me, and making sure that we're upfront and direct, and looking at the journey, and looking at how best we can keep the cost down, retain the condition, and get this and get that. And it's like a holy trinity of three things that most people want. You know, understanding what's going to happen to the hair in terms of condition, getting the result, and how much is it going to cost.
Yep.
You know,
that's all people want, isn't it?
That's all people want. And if you cover those three things in a consultation and give them a plan, then 90% of the time they'll come back.
Yeah. It's a difficult thing. I mean, as an industry, we're actually really good at communicating.
Yeah. Well, we talk rubbish a lot.
Exactly, but we're not very good at communicating what we should be communicating in the way. It's brilliant being able to talk rubbish and have the small talk for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. But then getting those little, like you're saying, those little nuggets.
Yeah.
That you can just get in there, and it sort of raises the sort of perception of yourself. It raises the perception of the industry, which is something that I'm very keen on trying to do. You know,
yeah,
is try and raise the perception of the industry, because you know, between, you know, sort of the way that we perhaps carry on doing, the way that we have working, we're an industry that sometimes likes to sit in the past. I feel certainly as far as pricing goes, consultation, that sort of thing, we haven't really moved on until very recently from sort of the old idea that people come in every 6 weeks or every week or whatnot. It's like, 'cause if you look back at the way that the price increases in hairdressing, they're not very good. Because you think, you know, you used to have Mrs. Smith would come in every week for a cut, every week for a blow dry or a set. She'd come in every 6 weeks for a cut, 4 weeks for a colour, 8 weeks, 10 weeks for a perm. And then you didn't need that many clients then. Now you're lucky if you get people in your chair 3 or 4 times a year.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the average appointment time now is like 10 to 12 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
it's a lot different to every week, isn't it?
That's a lot different to every week. Yeah. And of course, and I say to people that the clients are out there. I mean, if you do the maths, right, you know, and you say, okay, let's say you've got, let's just take an 8-hour day where you've got an hour's lunch, if you're lucky, if you get lunch, right? But let's just take that legal, you know, route, you know, of having 7 hours available, and you might do 5 clients in those 7 hours, if you cut and color, you know, and then you take that over a 5-day week. So that's 25 clients a week, you know, and then we'll put those 25 clients a week on a 10-week rotation. So we'll top out, you need 250 clients.
Yeah.
To be fully booked 5 days a week, doing hair 7 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know, there's loads of clients out there.
Yeah.
They might all be different price points. They might have different wallet sizes or capacity to pay for these things. But I live in you know, in Hove, in you know, down on the south coast of England, and there's hundreds of thousands of people within 20 miles, you know, of where I am. Now, you know, I've only got to attract 250.
Yeah.
Now, you know, that's not, when you break it down like that, that's not a drama, you know, because social media, let's just, you know, social media is a great topic of conversation in this particular day and age. People go on about having loads and loads of social media followers. You only need 250 that are real, that come to you. That's it. That's a successful Instagram account.
Yep. That's it.
As far as I'm concerned, that's a successful Instagram account.
This is, you know, I always say, you know, as you can look at these huge, you know, oh, this one's got 1 million followers, or this one's got whatever. How many of them actually come in and sit in the chair?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, is the thing. Yeah. Now, obviously, you know, with the numbers and whatnot, the bigger the number, the higher the likelihood that there are the 250 people. Of course, there is. But you look at it and you think, well, how many people is that bums in seats and cash in the pocket?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
most of the time, it's not as many as they'd like you to think.
No. And I agree. Yeah. We'll talk about social media in a minute, obviously, because
Yeah.
it's part of my business. But I mean, I just think with that whole professionalism thing, it's one of the things that really kind of, it starts with how you think about yourself. And even if you're not that confident, the consultation is one of those areas that requires nearly zero time, money, and energy to practice, because you're naturally going to get consultations.
Yeah.
You're naturally going to get people sitting in front of you. And if you need a bloody checklist written out on a piece of paper on the trolley next to you, then have it.
Yep.
Client's not going to mind.
No, no, no.
You're not an actor needing to learn all the lines. You're a professional who's going through the process.
Yeah. It could also be you know, a bit of an advantage, you know, having that checklist there and saying, you know, Mrs. Smith, okay, you know, what we're going to do, write it out, much like you do, like you were saying earlier. You go to the dentist, you get like a printout of the costs. I mean,
Yep.
especially here in the USA, it's like
Yeah.
you get half the yellow pages whenever you go to an appointment somewhere. It's got
Yeah.
everything that they're going to do and everything they're going to invoice the insurance company for. But you know, as an industry, that could be something that we work towards. Okay, Mrs. Smith. Okay, this is our plan for you. There you
Yeah.
go. Thank you very much.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've seen stuff like that implemented before. It never usually sticks that well here, but I think that just even having that reference, lifestyle, face shape, hair texture, start with the lifestyle. How much do you want to do to your hair? I don't want to do anything to it. Okay, well, your natural hair texture, are you willing to work with that? Not really. Well, then you're going to have to do more to your hair. So you're contradicting yourself straight away. That honesty initially, I find, breaks that mold of them telling you.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I've seen it loads where stylists get guided by the client and not the other way around.
Yeah.
I could go on about this all day, but I won't. I won't take you to task on that. Because I think there's so much to talk about. In this particular episode, maybe we could come back and talk about one specific thing in the future. But I think for me, it's just something that it's the part of the industry that probably lets us down the most.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think you're quite right. Well, because it's the first impressions thing. You
Yeah,
know, is you get one chance to make the first impression. And the trouble is,
yeah,
as an industry, we've allowed that first impression to become a blanket statement before we start.
yes,
You know, and is that whole thing of creating that professionalism and creating that image and vision. This is, you know, I'm here for an appointment with a
yeah,
hairdresser. They are the expert here. This is what I would like to do. They're going to tell me how we get there. You know,
yes,
that's what we need to bring in. That's what we need to focus on,
yeah.
creating that sort of ethos within the industry.
No, I agree. I agree completely. It's a fascinating part of our industry, and it's one that, as I mentioned before, I watched Adam turn these clients into loyal clients in such a short space of time. And then, of course, off the back of that, I went into education, as I was saying previously, about my journey. And I, didn't love session styling. It wasn't for me. I tried it, but I then saw this education side of the business, and I realized very quickly that that's where my passion lied. That I wanted to be able to share the things that I'd learned, even, at my, low level of years of experience at that point, because I knew there was stuff that I could share to people. And so therefore I kind of forayed off into helping Adam and Lee Stafford Education and stuff like that. And I got into the education space, and I think that's probably the point I met you. Was around that kind of education hair show scene, Hair Club Live and all of those things that kind of were, I don't know, maybe like, let's say 2011 ish,
Yeah,
maybe
somewhere around that
2009.
mark, wouldn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And I really, you know, wanted to be able to find a platform to share what I knew. And so I started. I did a qualification, like color masters through Redkin, and they, I expressed my interest to be a Redkin educator through Adam. And I went off and did this, finished my color masters, and then I did this kind of interview presentation thing, and I got an opportunity to train to become a teacher. Now, they at Redkin had a huge emphasis on actually being a professional trained teacher,
Okay.
not a hairdresser that is just sharing what they know through actual training education techniques, psychologically driven processes to get the best out of everybody in the classroom that's a visual, a listening and doing learner.
Yeah.
Right. And so we had lots of education around that. And that went on for like 3 years with those guys. And then they slowly integrated me into my own classrooms. And I did a shadowing program, and I did multiple teacher training programs through them, and I felt extremely lucky. And actually, some of the things that I learned from Adam, some of the things that he was implementing to his clients through this amazing consultation, were from some of the things he'd learned through Redkin as an educator. And that's another part of the business that I think's really boomed, and it's great. But there's so many people, hairdressers out there, who are sharing information in a way that is an expression of their own experience, but not necessarily ticking all the boxes of people leaving with as much information as you're needing to share with them. There's a lot of oversharing, and that sounds probably counterintuitive, but I hear lots of people go onto lives and stuff like that, and they're giving away a lot of information, but 90% of it's not going to be absorbed.
Yeah.
It's
It's too
not
much,
concise enough.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's too much.
Also, I find there's not enough whys,
Yeah.
and it is, I am doing this because of,
Yes.
I'm using these colors because of this. This is why I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Yeah.
I do find, much as I'm sure you do as well there, I know with your education, you're very into this is why we are doing things. But
Yeah.
it is that whole thing about, you need to know why you're doing something, not I'm putting this on here. It looks
Yes.
nice, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic and the technique is brilliant.
Yes.
It looks brilliant by the end of it, but people need to know why they're doing it. Because once
Yeah.
they know
I
why
mean,
they're doing it, then they can sort of go off and, okay, well, if I do that because of this, that, and the other, you can then go off and create your own little version of it or your own
of
take on
course,
things.
of course. It's that old saying for me when I think about education: you can give a family a loaf of bread and they'll feed themselves for a day. You can give them the means to make their own bread and they'll feed themselves for a lifetime.
Exactly. Exactly it.
Yeah, and so therefore, I think to myself, all the time, when I'm delivering something, what I want to do is, and nothing I teach is new.
Yeah.
I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not a Vidal Sassoon. I'm not a Anthony Muscala. I'm not anybody that is revolutionary. What I'm taking is what I'm seeing that people have overcomplicated, simmering it down to the bare bones and just putting my own take on it.
Yeah.
And my own take is about making that particular technique achievable in a salon.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I try and do. And that can be sometimes harder than it sounds. And sometimes it's easier than it sounds. It just depends on what I'm trying to get across and what I'm trying to convey. But the point for me is that when I think about any kind of education, I think about it through the learner's eyes. What are they here for? What do they want? What's in it for them? What am I doing here? Rather than just saying, I've got this great technique, I can do this, fantastic, asymmetric, undercut, graduated bob, with a fringe, right? But it's wonderful. It looks amazing, like you said, all looks good, but nobody can really replicate that, generally speaking. And it's going to be, you could build a clientele around it if that was your USP, of course, but who's going to build a clientele around somebody else's work very often?
Yeah.
And so that, I think you've got to have that in mind, and so then I worked with Redkin, and they put me through all this teacher training and Lee Stafford education. I got involved with those guys, and I was a rookie, and then you become a staff. I was a rookie for, I don't know, 2 years with those guys as well, learning teacher training. Again, they had a teacher training program because they'd all come from Redkin backgrounds, and it was very much a similar process, right? It was a very much a similar, and it was, to be honest, I think I don't know if there's other companies that do that now, but it was certainly unique to Redkin at the time,
Yeah.
To have such an emphasis on teacher training.
That's it. With the teacher training there, James, was that an actual formal teaching qualification, or was that their own
We didn't
sort of
come out of it
broken
with any
down version of it?
qualifications. Yeah, we
Yeah.
didn't come out with any qualifications, pieces of paper. We were taught by a chap who he may or may not have teaching qualifications. I'm not entirely sure. His wife's a teacher for sure, but it was a bona fide psychological methodology that you would get taught if you were going on a teacher training program. It was just taught secondhand to us, without the appropriate body to qualify us.
Yeah, modified as well, I'm sure, for sort of hairdressers and sort of what you'll be teaching. Sometimes it's not a one size fits all type of thing.
It's not a one size fits all, yeah, and it was very heavy into the psychology of education, and that suited me down to the ground. And I mean, there's so many stories and so many bits I could tell you, but we'd be here all day, so I'll digress on a little bit. And I became a staff for Lee Stafford Education. I did some work for them. I still do work for those guys, and I love them, what they're trying to do. And they're basically, they go to colleges, they take over the education, they retrain all the staff, and they implement the LSE recipes, which are basically all the fundamental techniques that you need to know in a structured, clear, concise, and consistent way, rather than sometimes you get this subjectivity in college classrooms. Joanne does it this way, Phoebe does it that way, confusion in the middle. We go in, this is how it's going to be done, all do it the same way, all sing from the same hymn sheet. And if they can leave with being able to do it at that's even close to that standard, they'll get a job.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it. And I really enjoy that about it, because I think that's at least some way of trying to create a consistent youth qualification, for young people that come out, and older people. I know older students that have done it as well. That that means that they can hit the shop floor running, bang. Yeah. They don't all, have every skill in the bag, but they've got enough to get them through, and pick up those other skills as time goes on. A bit like learning to drive, right? Anybody that learns to drive, you get in a car, you learn the basics, you learn how to drive a car like this, and then after a little while, it's second nature. And when it's second nature, if you want to go and do skid pan training, then you go and do skid pan training.
Yeah,
that because that's a whole different kettle of fish, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of see, getting on the shop floor. You've got to be able to be proficient enough to earn a living, and then elevate yourself through personal exploration and classes and online education. There's so much free stuff out there now, and so then I was working for Redkin, and I was working for Lee, and I went back to London 2016. I think June 2016. I worked for a company called Radio.
Yep.
And I was in their new kind of shiny King's Cross flagship salon as their color director, and they'd taken on Redkin as a color brand. And I had a lovely time there. My son was born in June 2017. My second son was born in June 2017. And it was just too much to go up to London all the time, back and forth from Brighton. So I came back to Brighton to hairdress. But in 2017, I was trying to figure out ways of kind of getting myself out there, filling my classes, creating, let's say, what now would be called a personal brand. At the time, I'd never heard that, around education in hairdressing, right? And then So I started creating more content for Instagram, and I started to think about, how I was going to present myself on Instagram as an educator, you know. And then actually I thought, what I want to do is I want to create educational videos of my own. And I think it was, yeah, it was early January 2018. I was thinking about creating these longer form videos for Instagram. And then they had this wise idea of cutting the time down to 1 minute kind of overnight.
Yeah.
And, or maybe they did it before then, but I wasn't aware of it. Does that make sense? And so,
Yeah, yeah. It was a very instant thing. If I remember correctly, it was like it was a bit of a, it was limited time, but it wasn't like a minute. And then
no,
all of a sudden it was like, well, I think it was when they were trying to compete. Was it Snapchat they were competing with, or was that when they done the stories? But anyway, it was somewhere around there.
it was around that time. And I thought to myself, like, what I really want to do is kind of create these educational pieces that might encourage people to come to my live classes. Anyway, it didn't work out because they cut the time. And then I was like, oh God, what am I going to do now? Like, I've got all these ideas and then I thought, well, maybe YouTube, and I knew hairdressers were on YouTube and I knew that there was people doing it out there, but I really hadn't, sort of thought of myself as good enough, if you like, to be on YouTube, because it felt like a step up. Jumped to YouTube was big. There was H.A.T.A.E on there. There was Sam Via. There was Freestyle Education. And they were all they'd already been on YouTube for a while and they'd got their production quality high. Yeah. And I felt like I was coming in low with the iPhone. And, but I thought, you know what, sod it. I'm always willing to give things a punt. And I was also contemplating at this period in time to maybe do a British Hairdressing Awards collection. So I sat down, and this was between January 2018 and June 2018. And I looked at all the former winners of Southern Hairdresser of the Year and London Hairdresser of the Year, and I tried to see what winning one of those awards got them. Where did it take them? And I concluded that 90% of them got nothing. Yeah. Apart from a little trophy that they can then stare at forever and ever, amen. But, what, there was probably 10 grand up the Swanee or more, so I had some money and I thought, you know what, I'll just buy a camera. I'll buy a camera. I'll get a laptop that I can edit off of, and I'll just make content. And I started to make content, and it was slow but steady at the beginning, and it kind of built up traction. And I, sort of was working day and night. I was all day in the salon and I was all evening filming videos and I was all night editing them, right? And I was trying to produce sort of 2 or 3 videos a week, and it took over my life. And I don't think anybody around me really thought that it was ever going to be anything. And I suppose, I didn't think it was going to be anything either, but over time it grew and grew and it got momentum, and then lockdown happened, and that was good timing because everyone was stuck at home, as we all know. Yeah. And people were watching the videos, and the channel was growing and growing, and I was getting YouTube paying me pretty handsomely for my efforts through advertising. And then I came, did some work online for kind of L'Oreal in lockdown, and worked for Redken in lockdown. And then I sort of, lockdown was a funny time for us all, but I was doing very well online and I was making a real go of it. And I think I came out of lockdown with about 70,000 followers, which, wasn't too bad.
That's a good number.
That's a good number, yeah. And it was, I'd probably gone into lockdown with about, maybe 15 to 20 or something like that. Anyway, it was a time of growth. There's another side to this story, I suppose, as well, because, I was fully committed to, creating YouTube and But it did mean that I wasn't very present with my family. I have a young family, and I wasn't very present. I wasn't very engaged with that. And it's come with a lot of sacrifices in its own way, because I don't think when you commit to something like that, in hindsight, I definitely let a lot of things slip. So there is that side to it. But during that, I came out of COVID, and I was working in the salon still, and I felt like working for somebody now didn't make sense. So I opened a little studio here in Hove, a little kind of 350 square foot, space, and had it as a YouTube studio slash space where I did my clients. And I still got that space there today. And I did last year, I did open a second one, and I opened it in October and closed it in October, because I decided I didn't want to have the responsibility of too many people. So there are a few people that work in the studio, but not all that many. And I didn't want to have the responsibility of more people. So that was something that I dropped off quite quickly. But, the channel opened doors, and, my life took a sort of slightly funny turn about 2 years ago, and my relationship with my partner at the time broke down and stuff. And, it's been difficult to maintain the momentum mentally that I had during lockdown, and for all the things that I created and did. And I had a big lawsuit with a major brand that came for me over some intellectual property, and that was very stressful. And it was totally unjustified. And I never spoke about it, actually, not really ever spoke about it until right now.
Yeah.
So this is an exclusive, Ben.
Oh, thank you, James.
Some people know, but not many. And, it's been, although that's all sounded like a sort of very successful, in inverted commas, story of, growth and, all the rest of it. I definitely hit a hump in the road, and still kind of only just coming over the other side of that hump. And the channel's grown in that time, and I still produce content. I think it's on about 110,000 followers now. And I'm not producing the content at the level I was anywhere near, but YouTube still pay on the basis that lots of people still watch, which I'm very grateful for, all the comments that people leave, and the community that kind of still watches, even though I'm to some degree absent from it. And I think creating that platform, and this is the kind of other side of social media that I don't think many people would necessarily talk about, is that the tremendous level of sacrifice that can go into creating something that is a personal brand, and how quickly, if you don't keep up that momentum, that it feels like a very uphill battle to bring it back again.
Oh, I think that is something that people don't realise. I mean, it's something I've spoken about a couple of times now on previous episodes. It's like the amount of sacrifice that is involved in order to create a business, create a profile, to get where you want to go, to be doing the jobs that you want to be doing. It's immense. It's something that I struggled with sort of previously. Yeah, pre-lockdown. It was lockdown when I realised I need to sort myself out a bit here. Need to slow up a bit. I mean, I was away 4 months a year. I was out of my house 4 months a year.
Yeah.
Traveling and working on shoots, working on shows, doing everything.
Yeah.
And it's like you get back, and it was the second week of lockdown, I remember, and it was like I thought, I feel really weird, but like full of energy. And I realised it was because I wasn't tired.
Yeah.
I wasn't completely exhausted. And it was quite a revelation. And then after that, I thought, no, we've got to do this in a different way. But that was part of the joy of it. It allowed that reset. And like you're saying, there's the sacrifice that is involved certainly in your personal life is always the one that suffers first. It's very, very, very difficult in order to. Anyone who says they've got the work-life balance has only got that because they've done the work bit for a long time before.
Yes, agreed. And I think it's just for anybody that's out there that thinks they want to take, the reason that there's only a few people, like in reality, hairdressers wise, with these audiences, is because they've sacrificed a lot. They've given up a lot, and the ones with the opportunities that have got large followings, they've got there, not always. And like I said, I don't think I'm the greatest hairdresser since sliced bread. I'm not. I just put the hours in, and I got the opportunities through kind of perspiration, and hard work, sort of reflecting on the other side of it all, now, and I'm still like not over the hump really, of everything that has gone on in the last couple of years, but I feel like I'm coming to a point now where I can kind of turn a corner with it, and just say, look, needs must. I've put a lot of hard work in, and I don't want to let it all go,
Yeah.
and it's been nice to take a step back and just focus on clients. Last year, I just focused on clients. I made videos, but I just focused on clients. And, I built my clientele by over 30% in 1 year,
Yeah.
And that was just word of mouth, really. For anybody that sees my Instagram, you'll know that I don't talk about clients very much. My top one's pinned saying I do clients, because people used to message me saying, do you still do clients' hair? And I say, because obviously it's all kind of education based.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was just nice to have that moment of like, actually, the thing that I love as much as any of that, creating content or being, teaching or whatever, was just being in the studio, making people happy, doing their hair.
Yeah.
And the appreciation of that was immense.
Obviously, when you're creating content, even if it is on a live person, it's still a very, very different a different scenario to when you've got a client in your chair. It's if you're shooting content and you're shooting it sort of a good level of production,
Yeah.
it's very robotic, it's very mechanical, it's very,
Yes.
everything's got to fit in its place, otherwise this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah. It
obviously
looks ridiculous.
exactly, but when you're in with the client, who's in the chair and you're doing their hair, it's that they do sort of almost become your, I always call them professional friends.
Yeah.
Because you get the
Yes.
people who you like to do, and but that's as long as yourself and I have been doing this, you tend to only have the clients that you get on with anyway at this point.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in 2019, um, I had a load of clients that I just didn't get on with, and I very politely let them go.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was long enough into this career to not want to come to work and dread doing someone's hair.
Yeah.
You know, and I just gave them other options for other stylists that they might get along with, or other people in other salons that I thought that I knew that might be, because I think this, you're going to produce better work if you come to work happy, at not dreading, Mrs. Jones, than you are if you turn up thinking, oh no, halfway through the day, and so therefore, actually, it made such an immense difference not knowing that I didn't have to do their hair anymore. It really, it's probably the main reason that I then continued to do clients after the whole, success of YouTube and all the rest of it, is because I wheedled down to the ones that I loved,
Yeah.
And that was enough. There was enough clients there to be selected, because I was probably doing 13 clients a day at that point.
Yeah. It's a lot,
you know,
isn't it?
which is a lot, and I don't do that anymore, thank God. But yeah, I probably do about 30 hours a week ish on
Yeah.
clients, and I'm quite happy with that. you
Yeah.
know
There's nothing
um
wrong with that. That's for sure. Something that certainly
no.
after lockdown that I done as well. I cut down to
Yeah.
three days a week after lockdown.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
I was busy enough that I could do that. I was still earning, very good money doing it. It was just
Yeah.
a case of, it was, yeah, this is nice, because obviously you couldn't travel anywhere, so show work, session work, that's all gone. So it was
Yeah.
like, well, just I'll do my 3 days a week. I play golf. I, potter around the place. It's quite nice.
Yeah, yeah, that's lovely. I mean, that's the one, isn't it? I mean, I've gone back to not to golf because I don't enjoy playing golf anymore. But I've gone back to my other hobby, which is cue sports.
Okay.
Um, so pool, snooker, American pool, any cue sport, I'm there for it.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think just having that what has become a giant reset, of a couple of years, and I'm sure that anybody that watch the channel regularly, and I don't know if any of them will ever hear this, but I appreciate them massively because it's given me the opportunity to not to have this sort of period of breakdown and not and allow myself to kind of get over it, to
Yeah.
recover without the pressures of every single little thing, being about money or, me personally having to be there to make that money for life to go on. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the future, I'm definitely going to get back into making videos for YouTube. I'm feeling for the first time in a long time that I could find the kind of creative juices to make that work. In terms of the studio, I ultimately would like to move that from where it is and make it a slightly more prominent location because it's tucked away, hidden in the middle of Hove. You wouldn't find it unless I gave you the address, sort of thing. Because it was my YouTube studio and it was just where I did my clients, really. And I do have people that work there, and I would like to make it a bit more of a prominent thing because it's a freelancing studio that works off the premise that the day rate is one haircut.
Okay.
So you come and do 10 haircuts, you give me one as a day rate, and you take home 9.
Yeah. Is there a fixed pricing structure? Is there in there, or is there? Or obviously, it's very difficult given the disguised employment laws that they're getting very keen on enforcing a lot firmer these days. But yeah, how does that work then, James? Does everyone work off a similar price scale, or?
No, everyone chooses their own price.
Okay.
I'm probably as far inside the hidden employment rules, the R35 rulings, as anybody I know.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody's got complete autonomy, got their own keys, got their own businesses, got their own card machines, got their own products.
Yeah. They're
Everything
literally
that
just renting a chair.
they're literally renting the chair, and
Yeah.
they all work in other locations as well.
Okay.
So I really am ticking all the boxes.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
important
it's
for
some,
people to know because there's a lot of people. I mean, I see it come up in the group constantly about that, and it's like it's a very murky water. Essentially, you can just be a landlord. You can rent the chair, same as you're doing. That's the only way you can do it, really.
yeah, that's the only way you can do it. I mean, I'm currently planning a video series about it, and talking about it. But it's, as I say, it's the first time in a long time that I felt like I've probably got the momentum to create something, and put it out there again. So that's going to be probably maybe the first run, I guess, of me wanting to be back in that frame of mind.
Yeah.
And then then move the studio to something a bit more prominent. That would be nice. And I think subsequently, it's in terms of education, I love the online education side of things. Yes, it's not quite as interactive as face to face, but the future for me in the next kind of 3 to 5 years is get back to making YouTube videos, move the salon, consolidate what I've already done, and just build off of that.
Absolutely.
Having had a couple of years of kind of pretty a rough ride.
Yeah, that's what you can do. I mean, you've built a great solid foundation to build from. And it
Yeah,
goes back a little bit of what you were saying earlier. Is why I think YouTube is a fantastic platform for hairdressing, especially doing what you're doing, providing it's quality education. This isn't a look at me, budget reality TV, show off stuff. This is good quality education that you
Thanks,
provide.
Ben.
And but the thing is with that is the YouTube is it's like that little bank of money. Once you grow it to a point, it continues to tick over. And I think that's something as sort of hairdressers, especially given the previous couple of years with the pandemic and whatnot, is creating that source of income and that stream of income where you don't have to be working. You don't
No.
have to be doing hair. If you've got a coffee shop, for instance, you could sell 1 cup of coffee in an hour, you could sell 100.
Yes.
So you're able to make a little bit of money up here and there. Whereas hairdressing, you could do your one haircut in an hour or one haircut in half, or whatever your
Yeah.
time frame is. But once
Yeah.
it's gone, it's gone. So
Yes.
it's a brilliant model that you're running there, Joe.
Yeah. Thank you, mate. Yeah. I mean, look, anybody that's out there that wants to give away information because they want to help, and that's why I started it.
No, exactly. Yeah.
For me, it's the best platform by far. I know a lot of brands don't recognize it. They're still Instagram focused. But I think, to be free of the brands, if you want to do your own thing and say your own stuff, YouTube's the way forward, because, the brand deals are okay out there, but actually YouTube's better.
Yeah.
The brands, if you're smashing it on YouTube, the brands can't compete.
Yeah. No, absolutely. YouTube is brilliant for that. Like I say, I also like to think, is the way that you're doing it is I've always thought, don't appeal to the masses, because everyone's doing that. You go on Instagram and they change the algorithm every other week, and they this happens, that happens. It doesn't work. YouTube, you go on there. If you've created a good video that is on, let's say, a one length haircut, you created a good video. Lots of people have watched it. Lots of people, it will pop up forever.
Yes.
It's a fantastic platform.
It's so good. I mean, lots of people poo-poo it, but it is. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't, I wouldn't be anywhere near the position I am today without it. So, anybody that wants to be or create decent education, it's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy. Don't ever think it's easy, but it's worth it. Is the and any advice to anybody that I'd give them is, one, be consistent, and two, don't worry, don't get obsessed with the numbers. The numbers will happen with patience and time. But it is a lot of work, as I'd mentioned, and that the people around you have got to be willing to go on the journey with you. But I mean, I think for me, this industry is a fantastic industry with lots of opportunity, and you can write your own paychecks at the end of the day if you put the hours in, put the time in, put your best foot forward and be dedicated to learning your craft and starting your career with, or wherever you are in your career, making sure that you're fundamentally a solid hairdresser. There is a plethora of opportunity, and an industry that, as much as we may have our down moments about or whatever, it is one of those industries that you're not going to be beholden to redundancies. You're not going to be beholden to company sales, because you are effectively your own personal brand, your own micro business. And this is why you should represent yourself well to each and every client every single time. Don't underestimate who you are or what you are as a hairdresser, because every client that sits in that chair might be one step closer to a goal that you don't even know exists.
Absolutely, James. And I think after that lovely little sentiment, I think that is about time that we called it a day on today's podcast. I'm sure we're going to get you back in the not too distant future to talk about some other bits that you're up to as well.
Yeah, of course, Ben. I'll always come on.
Thank you
nice
very
one,
much.
Guys. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, James. Bye-bye.